Hi, this is Ryan Bloom from Urban Bonfire. Thanks for joining today's episode of the Fireside Chat. Today we'll be speaking with Michelle Lisac, incredible designer from Northern California in and around the Santa Cruz area. And we're going to be talking to her about her experience, her story, how she started her own firm, but more importantly, what she's seeing today in trends and what people are asking for as it relates to design of their homes. How travel budgets are now being slashed and that money and investment is going into the home, and key elements that she is using to create indoor-outdoor living spaces that come together in harmony. And most importantly, what she's seeing and things that are here to stay, like the idea of the kids' lounge. Amazing things to talk about, and it's going to be a great episode. I've been looking at your work, your website, your Instagram, but before jumping into anything sort of businessy related, I'd love to hear from you based on where you are in Northern California. First of all, is everyone around you okay as it relates to COVID, as it relates to the fires that I've been watching? I would feel like a complete ass to start talking about business without talking about more human things. So I'd love to sort of.
Yeah. We were evacuated for the fires. We've been back in our house a few weeks now, so that's nice that our house is still there. Unfortunately, that's not the case for everybody in our area. But yeah, it feels like things are getting a little bit back to normal, if there is a normal for this year.
Yeah.
And my son is actually back in school. His school is like one of the few in the area that went back in person.
I think I saw you have an 11-year-old, if I'm not mistaken, in your bio.
Yeah. Yes, he's in 5th grade. He just started school last week, so it feels like things are sort of getting, back to somewhat of a norm. But COVID is still here. I think it's all over the world still, but we're all just getting through it.
It's exactly right. I think it's my wife Sarah has said often, during COVID, her line is "you do you," and there's no right, there's no wrong, there's no nuance. It's just everyone is going to, act and behave and just react in their own personal way. So
yeah.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
I would say small world, but not so small world. I know you're in Scotts Valley, just sort of in a arm's length of Santa Cruz.
Yes.
And when I was doing research before today's podcast, it's very close to where I actually used to live for about
really?
a year and a half. Yeah. Are you familiar with the revitalization projects of Fort Ord down in Marina and Monterey?
Mm-hmm.
You ever heard of a project named East Garrison from years back? That name ring a bell?
It sounds familiar.
So in 2007 and 8, the real estate firm that I was part of was charged with the activation of the eventual town center of the East Garrison project. And I lived in Carmel and spent a year and a half working basically between Santa Cruz and Big Sur on the development of retail and restaurant concepts. And it is without a doubt my favorite place on the planet.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a nice area for sure. We're lucky.
Amazing. The
lucky
drive
to live here.
Every Saturday morning I would drive to the Big Sur Bakery, and it was the most incredible experience ever. I still today miss those types of things.
That's my favorite. I love that bakery. We always go there for like Mother's Day or little holidays. It's so nice to drive down there.
It really, really is. It's a very special part of the world where you live. You're incredibly lucky.
And where are you now?
I'm in Montreal.
Okay. In Canada.
Yeah. Have you been to Montreal ever?
I have not.
Okay.
I need to go there.
It's, there are a few cities I find in the world that, almost everybody who visits them has a great experience. And that's not the case. People will go to, go to New York and say, it's cool, but too busy, too loud, not for me. We have those types of experiences as individuals, but Montreal, and there are a few places like it, just seems like everybody who comes seems to love it. It has that very European architecture, and food is great, and it's fun.
I'll have to go once we get to travel.
Yeah.
It'll be on my list.
Good.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear a little bit about your story. I know that before you started your own firm in 2014, I believe you were part of another firm before. I'd love to hear a little bit about your story, what drove you, or how you became passionate about design. I would just love to hear a little bit about you.
So I feel like just growing up as a kid, I was always into art and, creating things and, making things with my hands. And I feel like, and my dad was a contractor ever since I was born. He's been in that business. So I was always around construction, and our house was always in some state of remodel. And so I was always around that and always loved art. And then I feel like after college, I wasn't an interior design major in college.
Mhm.
I don't know why. I guess I didn't really think that like that was a job, or I didn't know anybody in that field. And so it just wasn't in my, realm. But then after college, I graduated with a marketing degree. And like the week of graduation, I realized I don't think I want to be in business and, sit in a cubicle and work for a big corporation. And so I decided to go into design, and I started at a small boutique firm in Portola Valley called Stappers Design. And I worked there a few years, and it was a great experience. And I left after my son was born, because it was, it's fast paced. It was hard to keep up with a baby and, working full time. And I just realized I just need to take a break. So I took a few years off and went back to work at another boutique design firm on the peninsula in Menlo Park, called Sullivan Design Studio, and worked there for a few years, and also learned a lot and had great experience working there. And then decided to go out on my own. We had a lot of family friends that happened to be remodeling and building around that 2013, 2014, 2015 time. And they were all calling me and asking for help. And I was, so busy on the side, helping everybody on my weekends, that I decided, I think I should just do this full time and go out on my own. So that was kind of when I made that leap and decided to break out on my own.
Quite a shift when you go from being part of a firm with, resources and that type of thing, to being responsible for everything.
Yes.
What was the shift like for you? I mean, as an entrepreneur, beyond just the role as a designer, you're also now managing a business, managing people. What was it a natural progression, or was it the quote unquote the business operation side? Was that for me, when we started, that was, managing people and growth and all that all at once. You can be an incredible designer, you can be great with clients, but myself as like an example, I'm not a great manager of people. It's just not where I want to. How have you found that experience to be?
Yeah, I feel like it was sort of an easy transition, because when I started out, it was just myself. So at that point, I wasn't managing anybody. And I feel like at the firms that I worked at, I wore a lot of hats. And so I did get to kind of see, all different aspects of the design business. So I felt like I had a pretty good knowledge of sort of what it entailed, but it's always very different when you're doing it on your own versus watching someone else do it. But you're right. Then when I got a little bigger and started hiring people, that's when I feel like it does get very tricky. And it is, I think that's maybe one of the hardest things about owning a business, is managing people and the hiring and firing, especially for a small business. You get so close to the people. It's kind of like a little family, and it's very hard when the HR issues come up and you have to let people go. It's kind of heartbreaking.
It is very difficult. And also when you're a small company of, 4 or 5, 6, 10, the amount of time that it takes to find somebody and retrain them and reteach. There's that is just, it's months, sometimes it's years of just nuance and personal relationships and, all those aspects.
Yeah. Wow. It's very time consuming.
It is, but
yeah,
you need to do it. It's an important part. What we have been seeing is this, and whether it is a part of just natural trend of the economy and where people are at, whether it is COVID has played a role in it. Everyone is basically saying that the design, home renovation, transformation, re-envisioning is on a hockey stick like curve. And I don't know if you're a fan of San Jose Sharks, but you know what a hockey stick looks like.
Yes.
I have to bring in a little Canadian when I can. Are you experiencing that yourself? Are you seeing? Are there other factors that you see as why this is happening now? I'd love to get your perspective on the sort of state of the nation.
Yeah, I feel like it is a very strange time, especially for our industry. You know, you see a lot of businesses going out of business, but I feel like for design, I feel like this might be the busiest that our industry has been in a very long time. You know, at the beginning of COVID, I was very nervous, like, oh gosh, this could be the end of us, you know, because everything kind of came to a halt there when there's a lot of uncertainty. People didn't really know what was going to happen, or, you know, how the virus was really going to play out.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I think we got worried there for a little bit, but then it's like all of a sudden, like you said, the hockey stick, you know, the emails and the phone calls came in. Even clients that we had, you know, finished their houses a few years ago were coming back and wanting to redo things or, you know, do more work. And I think, you know, after people have been in their homes for so long, which is not the norm for any of us, you know, nobody was cooking breakfast, lunch, and dinner in their house.
Yep.
And, you know, nobody was working from home all day and having their kids doing school from home and basically doing everything from home. I think, you know, everybody kind of took a step back and realized, if I have to be in my house 24 hours a day, it needs to be perfect.
Yeah.
Or at least be the way they want it to be. So I feel like, and also I feel like maybe, you know, people's travel budgets, you know, a lot of our clients would be gone during the summer.
Yep.
And I think, you know, all the lack of travel, I think all sort of that budget went into the house. So
I completely agree. I think that we're seeing that really sort of everywhere at this point. As
yeah,
people are, you're right, they're spending more time. And it's a fairly safe, I mean, if people are going to stay, it's a fairly safe place to put their let's call it disposable or social income they might use in, like you said, restaurants or travel or a sweet 16 or an engagement party. And now they're able to put that into their homes. And that you know, I don't think the notion of the staycation is new, but I think that it has it's had a lot of momentum added to it as a result of this.
yeah, it's taken
Certainly
on a
from
new
what we're
meaning.
seeing. Very much so.
Yeah.
One of the things I've often thought of in terms of the relationship between, and differently, I think, from an architect who has, I think, a lot more rules and restrictions in terms of what they can do. There's more of a code. There's engineering. There's weight. There's easements. There's a designer can play outside of the Crayola box a lot, which makes it a much more personal and intimate relationship with the client. I would love to hear, what do you look for in a client? And I know often it goes the other way around. You're typically asking the client, what are you looking for in a designer? But I think this is not a one-way relationship. For this to be successful, it has to be reciprocal, and there's got to be chemistry. What do you look for in a client?
Yeah. And I feel like this has been a learning curve. You know, I feel like at the beginning, you're just excited to get new projects. And, you know, within the last couple of years, I feel like I've started to get much more particular about the projects that we take on.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I always remind myself to trust my gut. And I always, you know, before we start a project, we always have a face-to-face meeting with a potential client at the site or at the home, or, you know, wherever the project happens to be. And even with coronavirus, I feel like that's been tricky sometimes, but I feel like having that in-person meeting is very important, because that's, you know, how you're really going to tell if this relationship is going to work. You know, I mean, there's a lot of different personalities and not everybody can, you know, get along and have a good working relationship. But I feel like some important things that we look for, like you said, is that connection. I feel like we have to be able to have like a good connection, have a good working relationship, and mutual respect, I feel like, is also really important.
Very much so.
And the type of project is also a factor. Budget, timing, all of those things kind of play into it. And also if it's something that we feel like sort of meshes with our design aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, of course, we design for the client. We're not, designing the house for ourselves, but something that we, could be excited about.
And it's such a subjective, design is so subjective, right? I can imagine that in certain cases, it can be very difficult when a client has for some reason wants a pink wall, and I'm just using a hypothetical example, which is so far removed from your and your team's potential design aesthetic. I can imagine when that can become difficult in certain ways, is how do you marry staying true to your vision and your design while still bringing in elements that the client wants or needs.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Something dawned on me. I was up late last night thinking about our talk today, and I'm in the midst right now of starting for the first time to plan a design renovation on my home. And I started thinking about the fact that, let's call it 10, maximum 15 years ago, if I was looking at ideas for windows or a kitchen layout or decking or an outdoor shower or whatever it was that I was looking at last night, I would have to go out to the library or to the design district or to buy $100 worth of magazines and flip through, hopefully finding something. But the role of the designer then was far more in terms of talking about the inspiration and then bringing it to the client. And last night, there I am, and I'm looking at Houzz and Pinterest, and even today, progressive retailers like Restoration Hardware and William, they have fused that inspiration design into their marketing and product. Do you find, it's a long-winded question, but do you find that consumer access to inspiration, design, projects, precedents has helped, hurt, both? I'd love your thoughts because it really can encroach, but it can also really enhance. So I'd love to hear what you think about how technology is affecting your business positively and or negatively.
Yeah, I'd say it's a little bit of both. I remember when I first started out in design, it was around 2007. So, I mean, obviously the internet was around then, but, a lot of the vendors and the companies were not online like they are now. We had in that design library, in that first studio that I worked at, we had these huge catalogs, and that's how you had to go through all of the product. And now you just go online and you see it all. So it was a lot different. And I kind of a little bit miss the physical catalog and going through the magazines and everything. I still do, go to magazines because I feel like it's still nice to have that, physical paper
I agree.
in your hand. But yeah, clients are very savvy. They usually have, been researching their project before even contacting us. So, they've already have their Pinterest boards or their Houzz idea books and all of that. And I feel like overall, I think it's helpful. And I think it's helpful, especially because people use particular language and they'll say, oh, we're building this really modern house, or we're building this really traditional house. But then I say, okay, great. Let me see your Pinterest boards. Let me see your Houzz idea books. And then I see it and I'm like, oh, I wouldn't really classify that as modern, or I wouldn't necessarily say that's traditional. So it's nice to have a visual for what they're thinking that, that style is, because usually it's not what I'm thinking. Everyone has sort of a different, design language. So that I feel like is helpful. And even if we don't necessarily use their inspiration, it's just nice to kind of see the through line and see like what they're really attracted to, because that gives us kind of a good base to start from for their project.
It's so interesting you say that. Last week I was doing a podcast with a very prominent architect up in more southern, frankly, in Southern California, in Malibu. And I asked him the question about, on his website, he had these kind of two categories. There was classic and modern. And I said, with these, like, to your point, these incredibly subjective terms, what classifies, modern, classic? Like, what are the elements or the rules that would make it qualify? And I try to, because my background is in food, I tried to compare it to, historically there was French cuisine and Italian cuisine and Argentinian cuisine. And today we're seeing the most incredible fusion of, you can go to a restaurant and it's like Costa Rican Polish, and you're seeing all these types of things, right?
Yeah.
Is the same holding or coming true in design and architecture, where the idea of definition is quite loose today, and ultimately people are looking to create more of that fusion? What are you seeing in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of the times when we start a project, the architecture can sort of drive the style of the home. But then, even when you get into a remodel, there's some elements that the client is trying to keep, and then, new things that they want to introduce. And it is kind of a fusion.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess I could kind of think of it like the old lofts in like Paris. They have this super, traditional architecture. And then, you kind of infuse it with this interesting modern furniture. So it's like a juxtaposition of the two. And I think we do see a lot of that with our projects and clients. Like, it's very rare that we have a project that it's all the same style throughout. There's always little elements that are brought in that, are kind of a little off, but it still works in a funny way.
Yep.
So I think it's nice to kind of have, like you said, kind of that fusion of different styles.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's more interesting, frankly, and I think it allows people to bring in certain pieces or certain elements that are more, without having to, quote unquote, stay in the lines as much. So I completely agree.
Yeah.
I'd love to get your thoughts on your relationship to the outdoors as it relates to planning in your projects. What you have seen or what you saw in historically your involvement in outdoors. Has consumer behavior or investment in outdoors? Are you seeing changes? To me, it's the most interesting thing for me, especially living somewhere where it's winter almost 6 months a year, comparatively to where you are, and the weather is just like, it's remarkable. I'd love to hear about your vantage point on the outdoors.
Yeah, I feel like most of the projects that we work on, we always end up doing some type of outdoor living space, as well as some type of outdoor kitchen and outdoor dining space. Like you said, I feel like we have great weather here 10 months out of the year. And so, we're lucky for that. And I feel like, especially now, I was thinking about it as well. We've had a lot of clients recently, either projects that we've finished or projects that are close to completion right now. And the clients have come back to me and said, oh, I think we're going to build an ADU. Oh, I think we're going to, do something else in the backyard. And I think COVID has kind of made people rethink the way that they live and the way that they use their homes. And, people are thinking more, basically their whole yard, their whole property is an extension of their home. And, it's nice to have like the big, La Cantina doors, you have a big, window wall, and you can open it up and you basically have like an indoor outdoor living space. We've been putting a lot of TVs outside as well, which is kind of funny. But one project that we finished up last year, that was literally the husband's only request for the house, that there was an outdoor TV. His only request. So we're like, okay, we have to make this happen. But yeah, I feel like, in California and where we are, people definitely have that whole indoor outdoor space, indoor outdoor living, outdoor kitchen. It's all part of the project.
So in the past, was it, and this is something that I hear when I speak to designers on a fairly regular basis, that this is it's not like it started a couple of months ago, but it is a newer part of the project scope for most interior designers, where in the past, for a lot of reasons, one, it seemed like the interior designer's job and role sort of ended at the patio door. And then it was another firm, whether it was a landscape, however it was, to activate the outdoors. And that created disconnect in terms of design, aesthetic, functionality, all of those things. But
Yeah.
you brought up the point before I could, which is amazing, that one of the major changes is in glass and nano walls and doors that retract, and the visual connection between indoor and outdoor has never been as subtle, if you will, as it is today as a result of this, where there's certainly from a cohesion perspective, there's a real responsibility. The designer can't just say, well, I'm building this gorgeous 18-foot glass wall, but talk to Joe Schmo landscaper about the outside, because I don't touch that. Tell me how you have fused in outdoor into your designs, into your thoughts, and what people are asking for today more than in the past.
Yeah, I feel like, oh, go ahead.
No, I always, from us being in the outdoor kitchen, or as we call it, your kitchen outdoors world, one of the things that I call attention to all the time is that if you compare the indoor and outdoor kitchen experience, the indoor kitchen would start with a specialty designer or firm who's going to understand the space, functionality, how people cook, how they entertain, colors, lighting, all of those things. And appliance choice is typically second or third on the list. No one ever goes into a specialty kitchen designer and say, I picked a range, now build everything around the range. But in outdoor, it's been very much the opposite of that. It's been, I go see my local barbecue shop or specialty retailer. It's like, okay, let's pick a grill and then we'll figure out how we're going to build around it. So it's completely different buying psychology and practices. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I feel like it is tricky, melding that indoor and outdoor. I feel like where sometimes we run into an issue is that the client wants a very seamless look from indoor to outdoor. And, usually homes have wood floor, and, wood floor doesn't necessarily work well in the outdoors. So then we kind of have to figure out, how can we make this seamless transition from, coming from the inside and walking to the outside, and even in, like the threshold for the door, they want it to almost look like it doesn't exist. You're just going from one space to the next, and it's all very seamless. So I feel like in that respect, we either have to bring a lot of outdoor materials in, or figure out how to make inside materials work outdoors. And with the kitchens too, we're actually working on a project right now. It's in the very early phases, but this project has, the big, window wall, and an outdoor kitchen, outdoor living room, and a huge outdoor fireplace. And we're trying to make that all very seamless. And actually, one of the issues we ran into was trying to find outdoor kitchen cabinetry that was going to hold up outdoors. So I was like so excited when this opportunity came up to talk to you. I was like, oh my gosh, they make outdoor kitchen cabinets. So it was very fortuitous.
The feeling is very mutual. I've always believed that, and Urban Bonfire as a company and brand really started with my business partner, Stefan. We never knew each other until 2013, but he grew up spending a lot of time in upstate New York with his family on the weekends. And I was in the Laurentians, which is an hour and a half from Montreal, beautiful mountains and lakes. And my whole experience was outdoors in those times. And I believe today that I acknowledge that an indoor kitchen is a need and an outdoor kitchen is a want. I'm not delusional in that effect, but I also believe that people today will enjoy and use their outdoor space as much, or even in certain cases more. If you look at real celebration and real quality entertaining time, the outdoor space has never been more important. So I've never understood why design, aesthetic, functionality, all those things that you would look for indoors, why those were not available in outdoor material grades until depending on how far you look back, 10 years ago, let's say, something like
Yeah.
that. Like I say all the time, if you look at the traditional outdoor kitchen with that empty hollow frame, and you'd never see that in an indoor environment. You'd never see a hollow cavity with stainless steel access doors. So
Yeah.
part of it for us is, and the aesthetic cohesion that you just referred to, I believe is the primary reason why people are gravitating towards higher end brands of outdoor cabinetry, and not even discussing ours. There's a whole host of incredible products on the market.
Yeah, I feel like the outdoor countertop industry has, come a long way, but I feel like the outdoor cabinetry had it was lacking. So I feel like you guys are filling a need.
Well, thank you. We tried. We're certainly still I still consider us a startup, but it feels very, very good. It doesn't feel like we make a product. It feels like we make a frame or a canvas, which finally allows a designer or a design professional like you and your colleagues to add the color and the creativity, so you can really, put your stamp on it and say, I feel like this is a reflection. Like I had enough choice that I can actually not feel like I settled and just bought a
Yeah.
product. I could turn this into a project.
Yep.
What are you seeing customers, whether it's male, female, or collectively, what do you see as some of the growing requests or questions about outdoor space activation? What are new things you're hearing, getting asked about, learning about?
I mean, I feel like in the outdoor space, like you said, there's always it kind of always starts with the barbecue, it seems like. But now I feel like there's more involved in the outdoor kitchen space, and it's more almost more like an outdoor entertainment space. Like instead of just the outdoor kitchen, it's also like they want a bar with a refrigerator attached, so that it can be like an outdoor, entertaining space where, the person is cooking and all the friends can be out there hanging out and, having hors d'oeuvres and drinks while the cooking is happening. And more like that outdoor living space, like with the big dining table. We've also done some lighting, like chandeliers or things hanging in trees, which I think is really interesting because it really brings sort of the indoors out.
Yeah.
And again, kind of like that juxtaposition, like who would have a chandelier or, pendant lights outside, but we've done that a few times. And then also the outdoor living space, I feel like is really big, almost like having a living room outside of your house with furniture that looks like it should be inside, but it works outside. So I feel like,
when you think about it, not in every case, but in most cases, if you look at the value of what you get outside for the spend, it's actually one of the lowest cost spaces to activate in a home. You typically, comparatively to what it costs to activate an indoor kitchen per square foot, comparatively to the outdoors, I mean, you get a lot of bang for your buck.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. Do you find clients are now, again, in most cases, there seems to be a historic 2 to 3 year drag between client finishes the home, everything on the indoors is done, and it's over time, it's over budget, they're just tired of making decisions and they just want to say, I need to take a break. There seems to be a 2 to 3 year lag before the outdoor space activation comes up. Are you seeing that change in your world and with your clients where people are saying, I want to do this whole thing at once, it's as important? What are you seeing in that?
Yeah, we have a project right now that we're wrapping up, and the outdoor kitchen was completed at the same time as the home.
Okay.
So that was all done all at once. But we did have, a few other projects where the home itself was completed, and then, landscaping and the outdoor elements were a little bit secondary. But I feel like recently it's all been happening simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that's a really important part. I mean, it really benefits the consumer when it happens at once, because there is such a functional and aesthetic relationship between the indoors and outdoors. To do them at the same time makes an awful lot of sense. I
Yeah.
completely agree. Um, from your perspective as a designer who's extremely close to your customers, do you feel like there are elements of outdoor activation, nothing to do with kitchen, just in general, that are missing, that you wish there was this, or this is an ongoing problem or challenge, I wish there was a solution to that? Are there any big gaping holes, as you can see, in outdoor space activation?
I don't know. I feel like sometimes it can be tricky, um, you know, landscaping versus, the interior design. I feel like that can always be a little tricky because we're not always involved in the landscape plan, but it
Mhm.
also has to work well with with what we're thinking for the outdoors.
Right.
So it is nice when we get to have a hand in that. Um, because I feel like we're saying, the whole indoor outdoor really needs to connect. And when it's, when that is in two different hands, I feel like with no communication, I feel like that is really tricky. It can be really difficult.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, and everything comes into play, when you look at that inspirational picture of that finished outdoor space, the every aspect of it, the lighting, the greenery, all of those, how people plant, levels, elevations, that all play such a huge factor into the overall, you know, uh, how the space sort of comes together. It's
Yeah.
true. Um, from your own sort of passion and design perspective, where do you draw, like, I acknowledge each time there's a new client to work on new creative designs, that's a lot of creative bandwidth. Where do you draw inspiration from?
I think books and magazines, kind of going back to what we were talking about, having that physical, um, and especially European magazines. I feel like things always come out in Europe and the UK before they hit the US. So I feel like to kind of get ahead of the curve, I like to look there.
Mhm.
But even, I mean, we get, a ton of different magazines every month in the office, and I always try to make it a point to look through them, even if it's just a quick flip through, just to see kind of, you know, what's out there.
Mhm.
Um, I feel like online, like we were saying, Pinterest and House, I don't feel like it's the greatest place to draw inspiration because it's things that have already happened.
Mhm.
And I kind of, I don't, I mean, of course, there's always trends, and your clients are always going to want that next, big trend in their home, but just to kind of get like a fresh perspective on things, kind of look ahead and look somewhere else than other than what's happening right now in our area.
Yeah. Are you seeing a shift in what is important to the client about the home, where, and again, I don't, I never presume to understand the regional or cultural nuances that are different everywhere. And having lived in California and spent a lot of time there, I know that, for example, the environmental stewardship or responsibility probably far more at the forefront than in other places, and that's just based on. But are you seeing the what is meaningful to a client um, has changed or is evolving compared to where it might have been 10 years ago, which was bigger, more and more and more? Now it might be, and again, talking to Doug, the architect that we spoke with last week, doing a lot of stuff, modular old shipping container houses, like really cool stuff, but very minimalist, still for a very affluent clientele, but wants cool, small, no impact on the. How are you seeing your customer base, if you will, changing, evolving? Love to
Yeah.
hear.
I mean, I still feel like we're building the bigger homes, and I think I don't really see that changing, especially with COVID, because I feel like now everybody feels like they need their own space within the home.
Mhm.
And, you know, the last quite a few years, it's been that open concept has been like the popular layout for a home. And now I feel like clients are like, I need an office where I can go and close a door, or, I need this space where I can go and then, people can't come in and bother me. So I feel like that sort of compartmentalized home might be coming back, where there's more small spaces and more individual spaces where everybody can sort of have their own area. I feel like we're also doing a lot of home gyms.
So funny you mentioned that. We have one extra bedroom in our home, and when COVID hit, my wife is a yoga instructor and is a partner in 4 studios here in Montreal. And when COVID hit, obviously these hot yoga studios shut down immediately.
Yeah.
And the space that was supposed to be my home office, or when we bought the house, the man cave as it was presented to me, became where she started teaching yoga from on doing Zoom classes. So I think you're right. If we had a big open loft-like space, that would have been very challenging to accomplish. So
Yeah.
you see people now looking to divide up space with more specialization and definition than big open.
Yeah. I think it's gonna, houses that we've finished, before COVID, the client was like, oh, I'm so glad we put doors on that one room so I can go in there and close the door, because we were talking
Yeah.
about not having a door at one point. So
Yeah.
things like that. And yeah, the home gym, I feel like, has been a big one. And also like a kid hangout space has been kind of a big thing, kind of like instead of a playroom, like a kid's lounge, where like there's couches and a TV and, things that will sort of grow with the kids more than just a playroom.
Does your son play this Fortnite? Has that reached
No,
your world yet?
he doesn't play Fortnite. He's big into what's the other one with the little square people? Why can I not think of it?
I don't know. I mean, my son Liam he's 14 and a half, almost
Okay.
15. And it has just been the most incredible thing to watch how, this is how him and his friends, they communicate. They're talking,
Yeah.
they're on headphones. It's their, it's their platform for how they communicate with one another.
Yeah. My son has been on FaceTime a lot with his friends. It's really funny. Like,
I've never heard my son use the word bro so much. I'm upstairs working. I'm like, bro, come on. Hit me. Never heard this before.
oh, it's hilarious. It's so different from how we all grew up. It's so weird. They're all just talking to each other on screens. And obviously with COVID, that's, kind of the way it has to be right now, but it's just a weird way to grow up as a kid and not have face-to-face interaction with your friends.
Very well. I've really, really enjoyed this. I've learned a lot, and if I can, prior to this, I spent a nice amount of time on your website and on your Instagram, and I'd like to just compliment you on the photos, the way you've laid it out. It's done with a lot of beauty, and I think that you have done what very few do well, which is it feels light and simple and high impact, but it just feels your message and your branding is beautifully balanced. And I think you reflect your design aesthetic and your personal connection to your projects in a very human way. And I really enjoyed the research that I did before today. I think you've done an absolutely gorgeous job at presenting you and your team's designs and what is meaningful to you in the way you present them. So I really enjoyed the research before today.
Oh, thank you.
No, thank you.
That means a lot.
It makes it really fun for me because I learned a lot, and I enjoy it very much.
Thank you. And thank you for this opportunity. It's great to talk to you.
Thanks so much to Michelle Lisac for an amazing episode. I learned a lot. It's a really interesting thing to hear from prominent designers across North America and here specialized in beautiful Northern California on what they are learning and seeing in trends and what their clients are asking for. I learned a lot, and I hope you did as well. If you enjoyed today, please sign up for our podcast and join our YouTube channel. If you love design as we do, please follow us on Instagram, join our conversation at Urban Bonfire. Until next time, thank you so much for listening, and we'll speak to you soon.